Let's talk about it.
Hello and welcome back to Thicc Radio, the podcast where we talk about gaining, feedism, and everything in their orbit. I'm James.
And I'm Tim, so let's get into it. Today we're welcoming to the show for the first time. Today we've got Damien.
Hey.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you guys?
Good.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being on. This is such a pleasure. You know, it's funny. Sometimes when it comes to the podcast, we connect with people and we think and we talk and we go, oh, we'll have you on. And, you know, because of life or because of a backlog of episodes or reasons, it can take us a while sometimes to getting people on. But we actually had the privilege of having a conversation, and actually it's been quite a quick turnaround. So timing wise, this has worked out beautifully. And listen, for people who don't know who Damien is, when we do the socials at the end, you're going to recognize exactly who Damien is, this gigantic, gorgeous creature in front of us. So listen, Dame, are you ready to get into it today?
First of all, thank you for that introduction. That was very sweet. Yes, I certainly am. I'm very excited and very happy to be here.
Fabulous. Well, listen, for anyone who does not know this, and admittedly, I've followed you for a little while, and you talk and, we talk gaming, but then, you find out, oh my God, this person used to be a model, but not like, you see some guys online who are like, I'm a model. Like, okay, you buy nice pieces from Primark. Like, you're not a model, babes. Like, you just like fast fashion. But like, no, you were a legit fucking model back before you started gaining. And I just thought, this is so fascinating. Like, what a unique perspective and what a unique experience that must be. So to kick things off for today's conversation, would you mind, before we get into the modeling, tell us about your gaining journey, how you started and where you're at now?
Yeah, sure. I kind of always felt like I wanted to be bigger, like just from when I was a kid. I remember thinking like all my like childhood crushes and stuff like that. I wanted to be the big guy, and I think I grew up in a very like strict, perfect family, if you will, and my mom being a beauty queen and all these like expectations and standards about stuff, and I never understood this need for me to not be like that, if you will, and I like follow this strict like regulations about diet, about exercise, about all these rules in life and all that stuff. I mean, I know that they're healthy and they're good for you in certain ways and stuff, but I always felt there was a big part of me that wanted to be a big guy. And I remember seeing big guys on TV and stuff. And I remember, of course, hearing critical stuff being said about them from my immediate circle and my society and my family and friends. And I didn't understand why it was so bad, because I looked at them and I thought to myself, like, oh, I kind of want to be like that. But there wasn't, like, genetically, I am quite fit. Like, it's crazy to say as big as I am now. Like, I come from a very, like, fit family, and it's, like, very skinny by nature. And, but so I was very conflicted in my early days, and especially because I started doing a lot of acting and modeling just as a child, and that was so there was pressure already there when I was very young to always look a certain way and be a certain way and please people and like do things like I was like very adaptable and like easy to direct and all that kind of stuff. So that was kind of my skill versus like my siblings were maybe really good at other stuff and sports and blah blah blah. And that, like this is where I excelled. And So I had this always in my head, like wanting to be bigger, wanting to not have to follow these rules, to be a certain way. And maybe it was like a rebellious thing in me, like from an early age, but it was always tied to this like romantic sexual thing that was in me as well. That was like the driving force. And for me, I think my gaining journey didn't really begin until I was in my like early 20s, and I literally didn't know anything. Like I didn't know that anything existed, that there was a community, or that there was anything called, like there was even called a chaser, or like that there was a chub thing in the gay community or anything. Like I was just surrounded by people exactly like me. I'm from like Scandinavia, from Iceland, and when I traveled, it was always with people that were modeling and fit, and like it was such a different world, and so it's so foreign to me. But one time I was uh, like off season, and I was back home in Iceland, and I met this guy, and we fell in love, and it was like an amazing time, and I really just like let myself have fun, and I wasn't taking everything so seriously like always, and I just uh, ate and ate and let myself have carbs, and it's so funny to me to think about this right now. It's like it's so polar opposite to my reality today, but so I indulged in life and had fun there, and I gained like my first like 6 kilos or something, like off season thing. Like, I had previously like sometimes put on a little bit, but not that much really, and it shocked me like how much I loved it, and how like hot I felt, how much more I was like into being sexual with my boyfriend, and I was just I couldn't stop looking in the mirror, and just like all these kind of things. And I was not one of those guys that I've heard a lot about and seen and talked to that were like putting pillows into under their clothes, or all that stuff. But this was like a trigger for me, and something happened, and I really felt like there was no turning point really at that point. Just inside me, but I didn't realize it at that point that that was what happened. Uh, but then because what I did was I postponed going back to the States, and I told myself and my agency that I was not coming back for personal reasons. And I told myself that it was because I really did not want to end this relationship and have to leave him and go. And I knew that I would be off for a whole winter and all that kind of stuff. So, but in reality, and looking back on it in hindsight, I know now that it was way more to do with my body and the fact that I did not want to have to lose the weight, or be stop this phenomenon that was happening. Like I was actually growing, and it was so like big in my life. I just couldn't believe it. So that that was basically the start of my gaining journey, and I never went back. I never went back to modeling like on the runway or in that capacity. I did continue, like we maybe go into that a bit later about the modeling stuff, but I never lost those first 6 kilos, if you will, which is I don't know, like 11 pounds or 12 pounds or something, and because I just continued to put on a bit of weight, and I had this very cute boyfriend, and he was like a fit twink, and he thought I was like gorgeous and all that stuff, and even with extra weight, and it was really fun, and he just liked that I was becoming more bulkier and all that stuff. But at a certain point, it was he and everybody around me was starting to ask me questions and started to kind of also push me in the direction of the gym again, including my boyfriend. And I just really did not want to do it. And so I, at that point, like, and that was like 8 months later, I realized like, okay, I really have to just make a decision. Like, what do I want to do? Because I cannot continue doing what I'm doing professionally if I don't hit the gym and I don't go on a diet and just fix this like I know so well how to do. Or, and also, what does this mean for me? Like, am I actually going to let myself be this kind of person now and just go for what I want and not please everybody around me, if you will? And it was a really big deal, but I decided to just announce it to all my family and friends that I was just going to do a career change and not go back. But the reason for that for me was so I could keep on gaining. And I ended things with my boyfriend at the time because I also did not want to feel any pressure from him on having to lose weight or be a certain way or anything. And that all turned out great because we're the best of friends today still. And it was a good like learning moment for me as well in being with people that don't put so much emphasis only on society and like or whatever with the body and stuff like that, and just letting me be me regardless of what that means, like how I look. And before that, I kind of never thought about it because I was always like good looking by normal society standards. And so this had never come up for me before. But so, yeah, that's kind of how I started to get into my gaining journey. And then from there on, I decided that to just completely kill this pressure, I needed to take myself out of the equation and give myself space. And I moved to another Scandinavian country to begin with. And there I let myself gain like 10 more kilos. And I mean, you have to understand also, like at that point, I'm still under 90, like under 100 kilos, and I'm looking quite normal, just like, but just a bit more chunkier. And so I was still like getting all the cute boys that I wanted and all that kind of stuff. But I had a lot of like conflicts about this. I had a lot of questions and um, stuff from the like from my friends and family and everyone. Like, why? Like, why would you, Damien? Like, you're so successful in this. You're so like, it's such a shame, like such a shame to have such a beautiful guy like do this to yourself and blah blah blah, and like all these kind of things were like very big, and it actually was like very hard for me to figure all that out. And I was like, I really had to think like, am I being crazy? Like this need inside of me, like, is there something wrong with me? Like, and I struggled with it. I really did, and like I even like quit drinking alcohol at the time, and just like, okay, I just have to like be sober and like completely with myself, figuring out if this is actually what I want, like if this is what is, if it's a real thing. It sounds maybe too like cumbersome, this explanation, but I took it very seriously, is what I'm trying to say. And I gave myself a lot of space to check it out. And then I went to see a therapist even and talked to the therapist. And that was a mistake in many ways, the first one, but then I had another one, and that was good. And it was more body positivity from that therapist. And it's so silly. Like, I'm not stupid, but it had never occurred to me to Google it before. But that therapist was like, maybe there are other people like you and that have this need or want, and maybe it's okay. And So I went home and I Googled it and I found this app called Chaseable. And I went on there and I found a lot of guys and talked to them and it was like insane. Like it opened up a whole new world to me. And I met my first boyfriend that is in this community there, and from there I found Grommr, and like the best years of my life just happened after that. And the first 3 years, and this is like almost or about 8 years ago when this happened. And the first 3 years, I gained 40 kilos, and it was just amazing and so much fun. But I also had to um, be very well. I took it seriously also for me, all like that whole time, always thinking like, okay, I wasn't like fully, I hadn't fully accepted that this is exactly what I'm going to be doing my entire life. I did think, okay, I can always return back to the old Damien, if you will. But that was something that I had anxiety about. I didn't want to do it, but I felt like I had to have that option open. So, but that changed after these first 3 years. I just could not see myself when I finally got like officially like fat. I could not think, even though I could have physically gone back to being fit and slim at that point. I just couldn't imagine myself going back to that life and not having the joys and the pleasures and the happiness that I had as a fat person. And that was really hard for everyone around me to understand. And I and also it was hard for me to understand that I didn't have to explain it to everybody or to go into the reasonings behind it, or and I had a lot of these feelings that I needed to assure people that I was not mentally ill, that or like all these kind of things, that I no, it's not like I'm depressed and that's why I'm getting fat, or no, this is not because of I was unsuccessful in my industry or whatever. So it was yeah, it was a very hard time, but also the best time. It's very hard to say, like explain it better than that. But from there on, obviously now you guys know me and you've seen me and stuff, like I have become very big, and I love it. And that's what yeah, so I look back and I'm very grateful that I gave myself that space and that time to take it like slowly in the beginning. And I met so many amazing people, and I'm still meeting new people in this community, and they really helped me, both the chasers, feeders, and the chubs. Like I had really nice chubs that helped me. And yeah, so that's the gist of my story, I guess, and at least the beginning of it.
Wow. I mean, I think we can sit with this honestly for. I think anyone listening can sit with that for a good time, because what you've just described in such eloquence, can I say? I think that was quite beautiful. You've really taken us on that journey from this such distinct life that you led with, and I like that you acknowledge that there is a privilege to it, especially as a queer man, this privilege that comes from being a certain size and looking a certain type of way. Of course, we can acknowledge this. You and I both have Aryan features, light colored skin, light hair, blue eyes, a certain structure to the face that, when thin, really appeals to the demographics. And you've gone through such a transformation. I feel like all the logical questions that I would want to ask, like, how did you decide to prioritize gaining, or do you ever regret it? You've just encaptured all of that so wonderfully. I'm quite speechless. That was very beautifully put, Damien. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tim, you looked like you wanted to go jump in and say something.
Oh, I was just wondering, so your career path was modeling at the time. And so at any point in your modeling career, did you start putting on the weight? And Like, were people making any comments about it? Like your agent or if you went to like a fitting or a casting, did the casting directors say anything about like, we're not so sure about you, like due to the weight gain?
Yeah, that happened all the time. Like even though I have these like fit genetics and all that kind of stuff, like you have to understand also the modeling industry has changed so much in this time. Like this is we're talking like when I started, I was very young, so it's like early 2000s and all that. And then it was just like not even muscly guys they were getting any jobs. So you had to just be really skinny for the most
Mhm.
part, and that is not natural to my body type. Like like my family were very like athletic and fit in that way. So I constantly got not reprimanded, but like told and asked to uh, eat less or starve myself before like a casting or a big shoot or something, and I just did it. Like I knew nothing else. Like that was just my life from being a kid. And like my mom, she was also like very instrumental in that for me. She had all these tricks and stuff about stuff. She like a former beauty queen, so she knew how to lose the extra pounds, if you will. And it was just such a normal thing. Looking back, of course, it's so unhealthy. And like I've discussed this at length with my mother, and we're great today. But it was a unhealthy thing that was a big part of my life. And but I had that continuously always happening, and that was really frustrating. But I also accepted that that was just a part of the job. It's just like there were a lot of benefits to that job, but this was just one of the negatives. And I wasn't really like sensitive to it though. Like I never took it like personally or like that somebody's attacking me or anything. I just understood that this is just the work, and to be able to do the work, this is what you have to do. And it was difficult for me though, I have to admit, compared to some of my colleagues and friends that, especially in the States, because they, whether I was in New York or Miami, where I used to work and live the most, they all used some kind of substances to help them achieve that goal. And I was this clean cut Icelandic boy that would never ever do drugs and never ever do anything. And I always uh, resisted that temptation to have like a quick fix for any problem. And so when they could take some kind of um, amphetamines or whatever it would be, I had to go for an extra run on the beats if I was going to allow myself that extra meal. So it was always like this checks and balances kind of system that I just lived by. And yeah, so I got a lot of that. But like I said, it wasn't that horrible. I just understood that that was how it was. And I have one thing that happened once that I actually was a bit offended by, and that was because it was like this gay photographer who was quite well known, still is, and we were on the shoot and on this huge golf course somewhere, and he like put his finger in my non-existent belly at the time. I was literally like 73 kilos, and he told me like, Damien, you really should work on this. Like I don't want to see you on another photo shoot like this. And I was just like, are you kidding me? Like that is ridiculous. And I had abs and everything. But so just to explain, like that, it actually was a big deal, and it did happen a lot. But I didn't take it personally. But that one time, I have to admit, it kind of
Mm.
hurt my feelings. So,
I think it is powerful to hear these moments, and I think because especially For many of us who maybe didn't come from a world of like fitness or traditional beauty standards, we lean into fatness as a source of joy, and for many of us, there's not a lot of unpacking that needs to happen, right? We can lean into it and feel good, and that's the end of the story. But I think, understandably, with modeling, all of us kind of know that there is an expectation of those types of scenarios, and so it's very interesting to hear you say it's not that it was good or bad, it's just that is the nature of it. And therefore, if you're going to participate, you participate knowing that that will be the expectation placed on you, right? Which I think, as you say, is very interesting because it's very different now to how I think a lot of people are approaching the conversation around modeling. And you did say that you have done a little bit of modeling perhaps since you've gained weight. Do you feel comfortable sharing that with us?
Yeah, sure, of course. And like, especially in the beginning, I still had my agent, my European one, and in Scandinavia, I did a lot of commercials, and like, I didn't have to be super skinny for that. And even I walked the runway like in Iceland and stuff for a couple of like 2 years after I put on a bit of weight. So I did do a lot of modeling still, but I was told by my agent, and I of course understood it and knew it, like that I would not be able to work in the same way, and that I would now have to go more into like catalogs and commercials and all that kind of stuff, which was also great and very different and like a fun new challenge for me. And I like was the face of many brands, and it was yeah, and it was lucrative too. Like you have to
I was about
understand.
to ask, I believe isn't commercial modeling where the money really is? Because like some of those jobs pay like around $10,000 a day, whereas walking down a catwalk you get like what, $200 or something like that.
Yeah, if that, like it was way better financially, but there's this, like, at least back in the day, it was for me like I felt like I had to like pay my dues, or like had to earn a little, like I don't know, like earn it a bit and do all these kind of things. And I was encouraged to do so by my agency and all that. And I mean, they need these kind of models as well. And like, there's a reason for all of this. And then we go for castings for bigger things, and that can be more lucrative. But I think also for me, I didn't really understand how lucrative the commercial industry could be at that time, because things were very different back then. I mean, we didn't have any like influencers or any of that stuff back then, and we just had like, if you think about it, we just had the big names of models, and it was just either the big names or the nobodies. But the nobodies were still doing a lot of work and all that kind of stuff. So I was very pleasantly surprised when I went into the more commercial part of it, and it was really really fun. But it has other elements to it. You're then being used for such a long period of time, and that is also like a different fact, or like a different uh, how do I explain this? Like it's you're selling yourself for more than just this, if you will, like for the moment you're in right now, for a way longer period. And I still have seen commercials that I did like 8 years ago or stuff like that, and I'm just like, wow, that's insane that they can still do that. And people compare how I look then to how I look now and all that kind of stuff. So it's extra funny to me. But yeah, it was a funny change.
It's interesting. I feel like there's maybe a comparison there to how actors are treated when it comes to film and television. There's almost this idea that, oh, you want to aim to be a movie star. You don't want to go to the silver screen. You don't want to go to TV. If you go to TV, you're never going to go back to film. But if you're going to go to TV, you've got to hit a serial and you've got to be on TV every single day. But God help you if you go to theater. And even though there are theater buffs and musical theater, you don't want to go to theater or your career's truly in the tank. It's very interesting, this perception of how we decide someone's value or worth comparative to ideals within an industry and what we should theoretically be working to. Even in a day-to-day sense, take myself working in London. I am not career driven. I want to work a job that allows me to do 9 to 5, come home, earn enough money to have a comfortable way of life, pay my rent, bills, do my groceries, and yes, overeat to gain and travel and see the fat boys. But in London, there is this expectation to career climb. What do you mean you're not career climbing? Every job you do is a reflection of who you are as a person. And if you're not constantly working to the next big thing and you're not trying and you're not going overtime, you're not going above and beyond, and that anxiety that fills you to feel like you're constantly having to perform, you can never just sit still and be okay. And in comparison, I think gaining can allow us to feel that. I do think there are people in the community who fall into that trap. People who will say things like, oh, Damien, you're so big and fat, but you're not fat enough yet. You could be even fatter. In fact, I haven't seen you posting a lot of new photos. It doesn't look like you're trying very hard. And you just think, baby, I did the work. I got fat. Like, I'm having a good time. Maybe I would like to be bigger, and maybe I'm working on that, but like, I don't owe you quote unquote progress to validate my gaining. Like, I'm good enough as is, bitch. And I feel like gaining should be something where we are allowed to come to a place of you are enough. From the moment you wake up to the moment you go to sleep, if you do nothing that day, period, you are still good enough. And what I gather from a lot of what you're saying is that's quite a substantial emotional journey you've been on. Decoding, you mentioned your mother was a beauty queen, and that experience, no doubt, through your childhood, through your progression to where you're at in life, that is such a transformation, and it cannot be understated. Just quickly here, for people listening who maybe struggle with that kind of dissidence, people, maybe they're on the gaining journey, maybe they haven't started yet, but they are struggling with the fact that in their life, people are placing an expectation on them to look a certain type of way. What is one thing you would say to that person that might help them to decide how they want to progress with their gaining?
Well, first of all, I would like to say, I totally agree with everything you just said about the TV and the movies and all that, and especially back in the day, it was way more the case back then, and also in the gaming community. Everything you touched on, I love that you said that and acknowledge that, because that is a huge thing that I deal with on the daily, even though I'm constantly gaming. What I would say to somebody who is feeling a lot of pressure, but is wanting to start out gaining, is that the question you asked? Or yeah, I think honestly, I think it's just about really giving yourself the grace and the space to sit in it and think about it and do it for yourself slowly. Like, don't overdo anything. Like, don't. I know that it's so easy to fall into these things of wanting to live the fantasy, but it's not realistic. Nobody is like that. Like, I know like one guy that can full time be living like fantasy, like how people want us gainers to be, and that's one guy out of thousands, that I know. And I think you have to be kind to yourself. I think you have to really look at this as something that you're doing for yourself, and therefore you make the decisions yourself. And if you feel like something's off and there's a lot of pressure, you question it, question why, and get friends in this community and talk to them, and you can weed out the toxicity easily there. Also, you can feel that people who are genuine and are going through the same thing as you, and or really like feeders that are empathetic and like nice people. They are out there. A lot of them are, of course. And so you can talk to people. Uh, and just, I feel like if you get good friends and you can talk to people and stuff, and just create this safe space for you to explore and feel safe, and then uh, yeah, I think it takes time. Like, these things are not overnight, and there's a lot of pressure on, like, for both, for being fit and also to become extremely fat super fast. But it's not reality, and I just think people have to be kind to others and kind to themselves. And I know it's so cheesy, but it's just the reality. Also, I really want to touch on this one thing because I get it all the time, on all my socials and my OnlyFans and everything. It's um, eh, like I just want to get to this goal weight or whatever, and then I will be happy. That's what everybody's saying to me, like, oh, I would be so happy if I looked like you, if I got this big, if that happened, blah blah blah. And I'm always telling everybody, like, there will never be a point where you just see a number on a scale and that will just automatically make your life perfect and you will feel happy. This is like, that is just not the case. We all know this from uh from anything. If you go on a diet and you lose weight, like for people that are not gainers, like, you have to work on yourself from the inside. You have to have self-care, self-love, all that kind of stuff, and that comes genuinely from within, and having a good support network and respecting yourself and all that kind of stuff. So if you're only gonna gain just because you think that you will be happy and people will like you more, like, I would question it a bit and just ask yourself, like, is that the best thing for me? I don't know.
I love that you said that because that's something that I struggle with a lot, is this idea of like, I need this scale to reflect a certain number to feel like I'm doing something, to feel like I'm actually making progress, or that like I keep thinking to myself like, oh, if it's stuck at 250, if I could even get like 10 pounds over that, I'd be, and I'm just driving myself nuts, and it's becoming more of a chore than a joy. And I'm like, but I didn't get into this to have yet another chore in my life. I got into this to have some fucking joy. So it's hard for me to like, battle the urge to get on a scale, every single day just to track what's going on. And I was doing that in the beginning. I was getting on a scale every single day and getting more and more disappointed that I was only going up by a couple of ounces or maybe a pound or two. I'm like, what the fuck? I'm trying so fucking hard. So thank you so much for saying that, because that is something that so many of us get stuck on, this idea of I'm going to have everything I want when I turn, or when I hit 300 pounds. Like, then I'm going to have the body that I want. I'll be able to be happy with what I see in the mirror. I'll start getting attention from the guys who only like the super big boys. And that's not the case. Like, if you were to go on Grommr and you look at some people's profiles, you look at them and you're like, well, they've got thousands and thousands of followers, but they're just sort of like somewhere in the middle. They're not super big, they're not super small. It's like, so what's their secret? And sometimes it just comes down to frigging aesthetics. People will follow what they like to follow. They will follow what they like to look at. Sometimes you've got that look, sometimes you don't.
Well, we talked about it just before. Something that Damien and I do have in common is a particular white aesthetic that people do find they lean towards, which is a racially charged thing. This is why oftentimes we reference the importance of anti-racist work and the importance of diversity in our community, and looking at multiple, not just body shapes, but skin tones and genders, because we need to remember that the value in someone's body goes beyond us wanting to fuck them. We've had a number of women on the podcast at this stage, and straight men. The sex ain't ever gonna happen. But they are all big, beautiful, gorgeous people who we substantiate and we support because their gaining journeys are just as valid as ours, even though sex is off the table. Plain and simple. And much like you mentioned before, thinking that people are going to be happy once they reach a certain weight. Baby, let's make it real plain. What is the difference between you weighing 300 pounds and 299 pounds? You want to look me in the eye and tell me that if you didn't weigh yourself between 299 and 300, that you would even know the difference? No, you wouldn't. No, you wouldn't. You only know your weight because you weigh yourself. Tim, you mentioned before you struggle when you weigh yourself. The listeners know I have intentionally not been weighing myself for the longest time because that scale is triggering as fuck. If I don't hit a number that I want to see, baby, that depression causes me to tank faster than you can believe. And when I'm down there in the pits, I don't want to eat. I don't want to talk to my friends. I am depressed as fuck. I don't want to do nothing. It ruins my day, my week sometimes. And I could have been feeling really good about myself. I could have gone to weigh myself because I was going, oh, I'm feeling thick and heavy. My clothes are fitting tight. I've clearly gained weight. It says I've lost 10 pounds. How is that possible? Baby, we need to delineate the value we have as gainers from the number on the scale. Who and what you are is not that figure. Your figure is your body. And if you feel a change and a comfort in your body, that is the only progress you need. And bully for people who can weigh themselves and not feel a trigger. But for those of you who struggle, baby, put it away.
It's crazy, isn't it? How we've wrapped so much of our gaining journey and our gainer identity in that friggin' number, and the pressure that exists within the community to keep it climbing. And I'm sure that a lot of that pressure is something that we just put on ourselves because I'm yes, there are people in the community who do those microaggressions of like, oh, well, you should be bigger. The scale should have a higher number. Yada. We run into that. That's always going to be a thing. We can't get rid of that. But the amount of pressure that we put on ourselves because we are going onto these social media platforms and we're seeing people that maybe started off smaller earlier in the year and they seem to be growing quickly and you're not and you're like, what the fuck, I don't understand this. And just the amount of pressure that you put on yourself to compete with these other gainers. And we were talking in a previous episode about the competition that men feel among each other. And it's like, why do we do this? Why do we compete? Gay or straight, we compete with each other.
But you know what it is? It's exactly what Damien has been sharing with us today. That long journey you've been, and it's a long journey. It's not just a case of, oh, overnight you decided, I want to get fat. Boom. You gain the weight. The mental coursework was done. You're at where you're at now. That's taken, I'm going to substantiate this and say like a good decade or two. Is that about right?
Yeah.
That's the reality. And that is exactly the same thing we're talking about here. The pressure to have to continue modeling and maintain your body and push for bigger projects and more visibility. Same shit, different day with gaining. This idea that we put ourselves that we need to constantly be posting, constant upwards weight gain. We need to post photos being seen with the right people. You don't want to be seen with the wrong people. You need to be making content, and you need to be making constant content of a high quality with different people who are also popular, or everything comes crashing down. It's the exact same thing. We're just operating to different goal sets, but that same mentality is there. And I think we've got to come back to the very thing you were saying, Dame, which is not just that you decide to gain weight and it's all over Red Rover. You started gaining weight. And even in the gaining weight journey, you had to work on yourself and move countries and make decisions that build your life to the point where now you can actually start to do the thing properly and not just gain, but maintain your mental wellness substantiated at the same time. And that is where I think a lot of gainers lose the plot. We lose ourselves in the expectations of other people's approval. If I don't have enough people liking my posts, I mustn't look good. I don't have enough people responding to my stories, they don't like me. We internalize it and it becomes a value we place on the spirit of the person rather than the body of the person. Not that it should be the body of the person anyways. It's all of those things. And it's the number one reason why we have talked so much about mental health recently and about self-substantiation in recent episodes. Because ultimately, this is a struggle we're seeing across the board. All of us need to come back to a place of loving on ourselves for who and what we are right now. In our episode, I Am Enough. That's the exact point. You are enough as you are right now. We need more conversations, and not just here on the podcast, but amongst each other in the quiet moments. When you think to yourself, oh, I don't know, reach out to a friend, to a good Judy, and say to them, confess to them and say, baby, today I am not feeling good at myself. I am struggle city. Because if you've done what I've done and get you a good Judy like Tim, that bitch will take time with you. She'll sit with you and tell you that you're pretty. She'll hold your hand and brush your hair, feed you a donut and tell you, now it's okay, kid, up you go. And it's fabulous. We can all have that. Every single one of us. That's one of the beautiful things. We look at the popularity of gaining and we go, oh, all that attention, all of that popularity, all of those people they get to meet, that is retained purely for this echelon of gainers who have reached a certain. Not when it comes to good community. You can have that day one you enter the door. You can have that right now. But you do have to build it, and you do have to substantiate it with connection.
Absolutely.
So that's my little rant right there.
No, I love it. I love that you say that, and I could not agree more. I mean, for me personally now, I do realize my privilege still, and I do understand that I'm very lucky as well. Like I have a lot going for me, and I'm very blessed, and it makes it a bit easier. I'm very confident, and also because of my background and being so out there and performative and all that kind of stuff, really, really prepared myself for this community and what I'm doing right now and all that. And I think just touching on the scale thing again a little bit, because I think it is so important what you're saying, and both of you have said. Uh, I mean, I have that on the daily. Like, how much do you weigh today? And the same person asked me that yesterday. And it can be on my OnlyFans or any of my socials, and it's just like it's nonstop. And I I'm very good at handling this myself, but I so often think like, how does a person starting out or with no background in dealing with criticism or any kind of um, stuff like this from other people, like how are they supposed to be able to handle this, like coming into anything like this? And it is such a big deal. And for me, like I of course am kind of like, because this is my job now as well, like with the OnlyFans, and I want to keep the fantasy going and all that. And I'm always very honest and stuff like that. But I am also boundary setting with these kind of things, because for me, I am not the person that goes on the scale all the time at all. I exactly like you said, like I do not want to kill my good vibes or my good feeling about it, what the way I look or how I feel about my body at the moment. And it is such a big deal for me. It has literally, like you said, made me lose weight rather than gain. And there's such a like shift that needs to happen, in my opinion, in this community, for the people that are so like pushing for us to gain and constantly asking us these questions, uh, because it is more helpful to not have this be there. Because I don't know, like about you, but if I'm super down on myself, I'm not motivated to be out there, be putting pictures up, or to have conversations, or to be eating a ton, or like to stay in the game, if you will, in many ways, because it's just devastating. Time after time again, you don't see what you're expecting or what you feel like people are expecting of you. I feel like I got this very early on, and to be honest, I do have my moments every now and then where it gets to me. Like I'm just like, there have maybe been hundreds that day, and I'm just like, really? Like, is this still such a big deal? And I can, I'm human. I can have a moment, but then I thankfully always get back to like, I'm not doing this for anybody else. I'm doing this for me. I'm happy. I love the way I look. I can also just choose not to open these messages. This is all up to me. And I am very super aware that I am the one who's in control of all these boundaries. And I think we have to, like you said, have good friends, a good Judy, like you say, and that's so important. And just talk to them about these things and just be open. Like there's a lot of shame also in our community. Like we come from that, I feel like there's uh there's also this huge distinction between like the fat guys that always were fat, and then the gainers that used to be like me and stuff. And there's a lot of like jealousy and hate between all these kind of things. I feel like we really need to also try and work to combat that and work on eradicating that divide and that division we have, because we're all beautiful and we all belong. And I had my like imposter syndrome thing when I came into this community for a bit, because I felt like, yeah, what some guys are telling me here must be the truth. Like, I'm only doing this because I like want money or, you know, whatever. But that was never the case. I genuinely have been wanting to be a bigger person my entire life.
Mm.
And who are they to say that I'm not a part of this community? Like, that did happen like all the time, and it still happens to this day, because I do have OnlyFans, and that is my like job, and I've been very lucky with that. And so I have, you know, haters and all that kind of stuff. But it's just, we all belong in this community. Like, if you're super skinny and you consider yourself a gainer, you're a gainer. Like, who cares? It is just, and we just have to talk about these things. And I love that you guys have this podcast, and the episodes that I've listened to are so amazing and just blew my mind. And I'm genuinely so thankful for you guys, because we need these conversations and we need to have all the different voices and experiences heard. And I think you're doing like the the great work that we need right now. And I don't know. I feel very lucky and very thankful that I get to be a part of that in some way with you right now.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And to your point of the imposter syndrome thing, like I would hope, and unfortunately you kind of proved it wrong with the anecdote you told about it, but it's like I would have hoped that people within the community could see that due to your consistency and your visibility, that you're much different from someone like, say, a Bruno Barra or a Nikocado. Like, these are people that we can very easily tell are doing this for attention or for, you know, money towards their Patreons. Like, there's a huge difference. Like, you are consistent in your messaging, you're consistent in your posting, you're consistent in the image that you want to put out there of yourself as being big. You put your belly in the forefront. These other guys don't usually do that, or if they do, you can tell that they're obviously doing it in a salacious way to attract attention.
They also don't meet up with other gainers, and following your Insta, you promote and showcase that you meet up with other gainers. And you know what? Gainers from, you know, there's, I don't want to get the name wrong, but like another Dutch guy who you call like your little brother that you do stuff with. And it's like, yes, like meeting people and posting photos and showing them together in the same space. Like, yes, gainers meet up. It's real life. This happens. I want to close this section in particular because I want to come to your OnlyFans, right? Before the end of the episode, I want to talk about that a bit. But I just want to say here, this has been a realization for me, I carry with me in my life, and I think this is a sum total of what we're talking about here today. Joy does not come from gaining. Gaining comes from joy.
Absolutely.
Just that. And look, it doesn't mean that gaining and growth can't increase the amount of joy that we've got, but I spent a number of years in a poor and very dark place with depression, trying to gain, struggling, and not getting past like 120 pounds, angry at myself. I did not understand why. It was not until I started looking after my mental health that I started to grow and change and transform. And I'm still on that journey. We're all on that journey. But people, please, joy first, love first. And just like you were saying, Damien, this idea of people who've got, baby, if you've got time and energy to hate on someone in this community, if you have the time in your day, in your diary, 10:58 a.m., I'm going to message Big Damien and call him a piece of shit because I'm jealous or I've decided that I've got to, baby, you've got energy to be going and doing something far more productive. There is too much of that in our world right now. And we don't get to choose a lot of it, but we get to choose what we do with our energy. So take that as a no. If you are investing your energy into negativity in places, put it into positivity elsewhere. Promise you, transformation. But your OnlyFans, mister. And I love that you've referenced this a couple of times because I wanted to ask you about this. I don't sub to many people, but I've checked out a couple of clips. And something that stands out to me, and I've got to admit, when I checked out these clips, it was before I knew about the modeling thing. But then I found out about the modeling thing and I went, oh, that actually kind of makes sense in my brain. So I want to ask, just to kick off on that part of things, do you apply kind of like modeling techniques, modeling know-how to like amp up your game when it comes to the OnlyFans and the content that you create?
Yeah, I mean, of course, like all of that experience and I mean, it just comes naturally to me now. I have to like be honest. But I do, of course, apply myself in a certain way, and I have friends that are very successful in this OnlyFans or Patreon or whatever, and I I knew also like going into this that if I was going to do this, I was going to do this in my like way, but like right, if you will, and not half-assing anything and like approaching this just like I would any other modeling job. And I have, and to the best of my ability on my own. And it's also been a huge learning curve for me because here I have to be my own director often and all that kind of stuff. And I also understand that I get out of it as much as I put into it. And that is for professional photography or having some kind of cameraman or all these kind of things. And of course, like knowing my angles and being confident in front of the camera really helps, and lighting and like just all these kind of things do, of course, translate into me being better, if you will, at understanding what I need to create good content. And I hope that is coming across. I mean, I've been very lucky that I've been very successful with it so far, and I'm really enjoying it and having so much fun with it and been expanding it even further and further. And I didn't start out with doing a lot of collaborations or anything like that, but in the last year or so, I've been doing more of that, and that's also been fun. And I've been, yeah, I think the modeling and also acting, like I know that like it sounds kind of bad for me to promote my like not that I'm promoting my OnlyFans, but to talk about my OnlyFans here, that is acting. But I mean, fantasy and role play is basically just that. And I was not only a model, I did a lot of acting and I did movies and shows and stuff in Scandinavia, and that prepared me as well and helped me and just to understand the camera and how to stay in the role and how important all these like small things can be. And I love that I get to play with that a little bit in my work now and still have these things. It's just like if you feel confident and really good at something, it's good that you can apply that to what you're doing and you feel good about it. And I choose to look at it like that with the OnlyFans thing. I'm just like, I am enjoying myself. I enjoy creating the content and I feel confident about it. Um and I've learned so much about myself because for me the key about that is just to be open-minded. And you guys would not believe like how many new kinks and fun experiences and like things I've opened up for myself just by doing this and trying new things. So yeah, it's been good. So I maybe went a little bit too
No,
far
no,
in
no. You are fine. I mean, and first of all, you ain't never gonna apologize. We are not Grommr, okay? You can talk about your OnlyFans as much as you like. We ain't gonna fucking penalize you here for trying to get that bag. First and foremostly, that is always fine. And when we do the socials at the end, please promote your OnlyFans link as well so that people can find it. But second of all, when you said like how this has opened you up to so many more kinks, we had the pleasure of interviewing Ivy Davenport a little bit of time ago, and of course she's like Queen BBW. She was saying something very, very similar when it comes to, you produce content and people make requests. Are like, have you ever thought about, trying a little something. Like I think she said it was alien hypnosis, right, Tim? Like alien
Yeah, her
hypnosis.
most popular one was like called Invasion of the Fat Snatchers or something like that, and
Yeah.
it was just a simple role
UFO over
play
the
with
house,
very,
green light.
minimal graphics and whatnot, but it was her most popular seller, so like people obviously really love the fantasy element of it. It's one thing to just sort of like dress up in like if you put on piggy ears or whatever and you acted like a pig, but then it's another thing to kind of go into an entire scenario and lead the viewer from beginning to end. And like I think people tend to appreciate that more because it's an entire thing that they can see from start to finish, and they can jump to certain points in the video where they're like, oh, I really loved it when this happened. So
Yeah. But I
Absolutely.
love hearing about that. What is an aspect of what you do with your content that maybe you don't get the chance to talk about very often, but you would love to talk to people about? Is there anything you'd want to share with us?
Hmm. I I don't know. I think maybe just that it is uh, genuinely about making also good connections with people. Like uh, when I say like previously, I said like about yeah, like being good at acting is beneficial to this. Like I feel like the hottest stuff that I've made is when I'm genuinely into it and I'm genuinely into the person I'm doing stuff with or doing it for. I do a lot of commission videos and even like video chats and all that kind of stuff. And if I have a genuine connection there, which is kind of what I always strive for, it's just mind blowing, like how fun it can be. And to your point about like what you said about all these kinks and like exploring yourself and your sexuality, like I I feel like I have opened up this huge new side of myself since I started 3 years ago, and I and like this is a big part of me now, and that is something that I don't think that a lot of people understand. They think maybe I just leave Big Damien behind there on the OnlyFans, but it is still like a big part of me, and I feel like it has been a really good, healthy, fun evolution for me personally to go on this journey, and I don't have any shame about it, or like I'm very open-minded. I do have my boundaries though, of course, about um what I do and what I don't do on there, but for the most part I'm very open. But yeah, so to answer your question, I think it's just that especially with the collaborations and all that kind of stuff, it's I only do it with people that I actually like. Like there are many that I've done, and I don't want to name any names or anything, but they're not out there because it was not a good match for me. And I just don't want to put it out there. And I think because it shows and it's just not who I am, I want to also be truthful and consistent for the people that are like investing in my journey with me and helping me out and enjoying it and all these kind of things. I take it very seriously. Like is what I'm trying to say as well. Like I take this job seriously, just like I would if it was a 9 to 5 job and I had a responsibility to a bunch of other coworkers or employees. You know what I mean? So it's yeah, that's what I think a lot of people uh, don't maybe think about. So thank you for asking that question.
I love that, and I think this kind of tweaks me in a little bit, how you say, it needs to be authentic and people can read that. And I think that reminds me of what Tim was saying. There are certain people, the Bruno Barra, the Nikocado of it all, where it's like, how do you distinguish between those guys who we say they're clearly doing it for fake reasons versus someone like yourself? And I think it is that representation of authenticity. It's like when you see a queer movie, we want to see queer actors portraying those roles because that authenticity substantiates the performance that we're seeing. We're more willing to invest in it and we're more willing to give it our money, which I think as queer people and especially as gainers, we should be more cognizant of. Tim, just to defer to you though, I think you had a real quick question for Damien, right?
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of pivot back to the modeling industry. And in recent years, we've seen, so like, plus size for women has existed for quite a long time, but now we're seeing plus size for men. We're actually seeing plus size male models walk from major fashion houses, Gucci, Versace, Chanel. So with the advent of plus size male modeling becoming a thing, do you think that you'd ever return to the world of conventional modeling in either a catwalk capacity or catalog or some other kind of commercial venture?
Well, I think that's a great question, and I obviously have noticed that evolution as well, and I've seen all that happening, and I think that's so great, and it's so good to see this happen all around us and in catalogs and everything. I don't think I would, to be honest with you, like not at least never like runway or anything. Like I'm also like a bit too big right now for plus size modeling. Like what we see right now is how I was maybe 4 or 5 years ago. I would have been very perfect for that, if you will, back then. But I have been approached, and through my former agent and all that kind of stuff, to do some stuff, and they still need like big, handsome guys for a lot of commercials and stuff like that. And I have done that, and not so like, well, in kind of recent years. But I don't think I will ever go fully back into that kind of modeling world. I do consider what I'm doing now to be a different branch of it. And I just really enjoy that. I also really enjoy that I'm kind of then self-employed, and I have my like self to rely on. And yeah, I think it's just, at least for now, like I'm still young, like who knows, like when I'm in my 40s or something, maybe I want to be one of those big handsome gray haired guys in a catalog. Who knows? But well, that's a question for then, I think. But
Honestly, Damien, this has been a truly incredible episode, and I feel like I've been saying that a lot recently, but I just feel like with every season, the quality of the conversation just gets better and better, and baby, you are no exception to that rule. So I just want to say thank you so much for giving us some insight into your past, your present, and a little bit of your future. So thank you. You're a star.
thank you so much for having me. I really, really appreciate it, and it was really fun to talk to you guys, and it was very educational for me too. Also listening to your episodes, I recommend everybody go now and listen from the start. It's amazing. So
Yes, absolutely. All of you must. Damien's told you, and now you have to. Otherwise, you're not a real gainer. But no, that was fabulous, honestly. Where can our listeners find you online?
Yeah, thank you. So you can find me on X or Instagram under Damien Dansson with 2 S's, and OnlyFans is Big Damien.
Fabulous. Well, that's it for another fabulous week here on Thicc Radio. Please remember to like and subscribe, rate us 5 stars, and leave us a good review. Now, if you liked this episode, the podcast, or just us in general, please share it with your friends and encourage them to tune in. You can find me on Instagram and BlueSky at stannnum.
And you can find me on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and TikTok at thiccmouse. You can also look us up on Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok at Thicc Radio, or at our website at podpage.com/Thicc Radio. If you want to submit a voice note or become a financial supporter of the show, you can find the links in the show notes, and you can always write to us at thethiccradio@gmail.com. So until next time, bye, Fats.
Bye, Fats.
bye, Fats.
Let's talk about it.
Thicc Radio is a Patreon and Enter app podcast produced by Stannnum and Mouse.
Mixed and mastered by stannnum.
Our artwork is provided by Lokitu.
Our theme song is provided by Waddling.